Okay, we got a lot to do. Let's get it done because we're almost finished with getting to the Seder. Now that we're actually about finally on the eve of Passover, Erev Pesach. Garcina Masech Sofrim. So we learned in the tractate of Sofrim, Habachoros Msanin Be'er Pesach, that the firstborn they fast on the eve of Pesach. Vatam Zecher Lanes Shnitzru Makas B'chayros. So they remember the miracle that they were saved from Makas B'charos because of Avi Ezri. Shagam Bechar La'av Yesh L'Sanos. Also, the Avi, as you wrote, that also the firstborn of every father should also fast. Because the Makkah also did it. It wasn't only the firstborn of the mother, it was firstborn of the father as well. Umiyu. The head of the household does not need to fast. Even though they were also struck. We learn now that it says that every single household in Egypt, there was a cry. That shows that even if there was no firstborn in the household, the head of the household would have died. The head of the households don't have to. That was like an extra thing. Loi machmirin kulahai. We're not strict on this. Hisnis, matanis kidei reichel matzah lavin. A person who's weak in constitution, he should fast so that he is able to have an appetite for the matzah later. So says the Gemara, that Rav Sheshes was also weak in constitution, and he would fast on the eve of Pesach. Mishum the instance because he was weak in constitution. Ve'ihaya yachol b'mima loy havi matzel achil b'la. Because if he would have eaten, he would not be able to eat at night. So therefore, we should always have our appetite for the night for the matzah and for the Suda that we have during the Seder. Now we're on Simin Taf Ayin Aleph, which is 471. So Kol Adam Osir Lechol Pas Misha Asiris L'Mayla Kadesh Eichel Matzah L'Sevon. Every single person should not eat pas, meaning should not have any sort of matzah or meal after the 10th hour and onwards, so we build the matzah with an appetite. Aval basar v'yerek umine tavshel sari. But meat and vegetables and a type of cooked things. So then, Rambam Kasav aval oichal hu tam peiros yarkas. But he's allowed to have fruit and vegetables. Avaloi yamale keres mehen. But he should not have a stomach full of them. V'yayin mutter lishtais hein, and it's okay to permit it on the eve of Pesach to drink wine. Rav. A little bit more. A lot or a little. Kihu gaira tavas michael, because it draws a person's appetite toward food. Aval koidem shah. A serious yachal lechel pas. But before the 10th hour, one may eat a bread. So talking about the 12th hour, that is chatzos. That's the 10th hour of the day. Sorry. The 12th hour would be chatzos. So now we're talking about the 10th hour of the day. This is talking about right before the end of the day. So we're talking about, I guess, this right around sunset. Before the Shah Asa Asiris Yachal Lechel Pas. It's okay to eat pas, or Ma Pas Yachal, and what pas can you eat, right? Chametz Aser Meschila Shach Mishas Umayla. We already said the chametz is forbidden from the 5th hour and honor. Matzah Namiloi. We also wrote that we can't have matzah on the entire eve of Pesach. The entire Erev Pesach, you cannot have matzah either, because you want to have an appetite of matzah for the Seder. This of Yushalmi, so it says in the Talmud Yushalmi, Eichel matzah Erev Pesach, Chayva Arusasai Bas Chabav, that one who eats matzah on Erev Pesach is the one who is like he's with his Arusa in his father-in-law's house before he even takes her out to his own house. Therefore, he did not find that pas that he can eat. Ela matzah shira. So talking about matzah shira. If you make matzah shira, in other words, you make egg matzah, you make flour with egg or flour with fruit juice, flour with oil. There's no water in it, and that matzah anyway is not allowed for the Seder. That matzah you want to eat, it's not chametz, that you could eat. Perush nelsha b'mei perush, and the one who needed or kneaded with fruit juice. The Yerushalmi says it's only forbidden to eat matzah that you can eat at night. But matzah you're not going to fulfill the obligation with at night. Until the 10th hour begins. And if he began to eat before the 10th hour and his suda extends into the night, psak Rajbam that af al gav de b'shar Shabbos v'yamas toiviv kayam peiris mapa v'kadosh. It ruled that the Rajbam ruled that on other Shabbos and Yom Tovim we also say that one should spread cloth over and to make kiddush. But Pesach tzarech l'hafsek suda be'kiyar shulchan. On Pesach he must interrupt the suda by moving the table. Rav Alfis, the Riv Pasak, the Afa Pesach ein tzarech l'hafsek be'kiras shulchan, and they say that on Pesach one does not need to interrupt with removing the table Beschadas, and because he's not going to have his mind there. Ella Pires Mapa Mikadesh ala Kais. Rather, he spreads a cloth and he makes kiddush on the kais. The Eina Mavarach Alav Bayer Peagafen, and does not make the bracha Bayer Peagafen on it. Mavarach Brecha Samaitzi v'Gaimer Suda, and he makes the Brecha Samaitzi and then he completes the Suda. The Yeshayim brothers say Shagam Berchas Hamaitzi Ein Tzarech Levarech. There were those who say that even the Berchas Hamaitzi does not need to make. Aval Rav Alfis, but the Riv Kasav Shetzarech Levarech Berchas Hamaitzi or says you know Berchas Hamaitzi. V'chei Bahag, and the Bahag guy wrote the same exact thing. V'lazeh Hechsim Adoni Avirosh, and the Rosh agreed with him. So to the 10th hour. So we have that the 12 hours of the day are split up from morning till evening. 6 meaning midday. So the 10th hour is a little before midday. Sorry, the 4th and 5th hour is right before, a little before midday. The 10th hour is about 2 hours before sunset. That's right by Plag Mincha, and from that time on, a person should not eat a full meal on the eve of Pesach because we don't want him to get full, and then he's not going to have food by the Seder later on. Now, we go up to Tafayin base. The Shulchana Yarach Void Yaim Kidei Le'echal Miyad Shenachshach. That his table should be set from when it's still daylight, so that he could come home immediately when it's dark and start the Seder. Obviously, it's very difficult on the second day in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. But the first night, it's allowed to do it. And Eve, if it's Shabbos, so then it's set from before Shabbos. That's a different thing. If the eve of Passover comes Shabbos, this year it's Wednesday, so it's fine. The Afhu bebase Medrash Yaakov Misham HaMitzvah Lamahar Lechol B'Shvil Nekesh Shleishin, and even the Medrash they should get up because it's a mitzvah that they should hurry home for the sake of the children, not fall asleep. So therefore, Ma'ariv and the Tefillah of Ma'ariv should not extend long. The Chazan should not schlep. But you can't eat any before it gets dark. So why is he saying this? Because the answer is that you could do mincha one of two ways. You could do plag mincha, which is an hour and a quarter, 3/4 before the day is over. And then, of course, obviously, by the time you get home, it's not going to be dark yet. You could also do it right after sunset, and there's still time between sunset and when it gets dark. So if you daven mincha ma'ariv very quickly, and you get home before it gets dark, that's not going to really help. So therefore, you could do it up until it really gets dark. So in different locations, it takes about 40 minutes, 25 minutes, let's say, right by the equator. It takes about 45 minutes, 50 minutes when you go further north. That time is when you have to daven ma'ariv. And then you come home, and right when it's dark, that's when you start. You have to start when it's dark. Why? How did you know that you have to start when it's dark? Because that was when you have the Pesach. The Korban Pesach was eaten at night. And you can't eat the Korban Pesach on the eve of Pesach, on Erev Pesach. You have to eat it on Pesach. So therefore, you have to wait for your Seder to be at night, because that's the time of eating Korban Pesach, as you're going to say. You should not eat before it gets dark. Shabbos the Yamim Tovim Yochel Nahaisif Michal al Shabbos. Even though on Shabbos Yom Tov we're allowed to add on, usually, right? You're allowed to make it early. Pesach she'anu zman eichlis matzah einoi ela b'layla dumyo de Pesach. On Pesach, it's only the night is the time when you have to have the carbon Pesach. The Seder Shulchan Yafe B'Kelim Nam B'Kavi Koichet. And he should arrange his Shulchan with very nice things, with nice things that he has. V'yachan Makayim Moshev Yesh Be'aseva Derech Cheros. And he should prepare a place where he's able to lean to show that he's free. The Kasav Avi Ezri Bizman Hayesh Ein Regilos. The Avi Ezri says nowadays, when it's not accustomed for us to lean, we don't have leaning or what's called fainting couches, so you don't have to lean. And when he does recline, he should not lean on his back, nor on his face, nor on his right side, but rather he should lean on his left side. For a righty, you have to lean on your left side because that gives your right hand freedom to be free. You could drink and you could eat. If you leaned on your right side, you're not going to really be able to eat. You have to use your left hand. Lefties lean on the right hand, so they have the left hand free. Upeiras Rashbam Mifnai Shetzarech Le'echal B'minai, and the Rashbam explains that it's because that one eats with his right hand. Iter yad yamina yita al yamai, and according to this, left-handed persons should lean on his right. For Rashi Pirush Hatam Shaloi Kana Levetzach, Rashi explained the reason is so that the windpipe does not precede the esophagus. Ulefizeh ein chiluk bein iter lacher. There's no difference between one left-handed and right-handed person, but Rashi obviously did not know anatomy. Anatomy is that the trachea is actually right behind the esophagus. So therefore, it doesn't make a difference because whether you lean on the right or you lean on the left, it's still right in the middle. There's no difference, and nothing's gonna change that. Rashi probably was talking about the anatomy of an animal when it talks about shechting. The Gemara says regarding a right-handed person or left-handed person, whether they're going to get to the simonim first or not. But with a human being, it makes no difference. So, Rashi was dealing with the anatomy that he known at the time, but these days we know that the Rashbam was right, and it has to do really with comfort. Isha eino tzricha seba. A woman does not need to lean. Pirush Rashbam b'fnei she'emas bala aleh, only because of the fear of her husband's upon her. Lefizeh almano grusha bo seba. Therefore, a divorced woman and a widow will obviously lean. And these days, clearly, obviously, women do lean. They should lean because there's no. We don't have years of bal. It's not really what's going on over here. Husbands give permission. So therefore, clearly, women are allowed to lean, and they actually should lean. And it became, unfortunately, a very lax custom where women do not lean. Clearly, if a person's very uncomfortable, maybe they shouldn't have to lean, but we even say that a poor person who doesn't have what to lean on leans on the knees of his fellow next to him, even if it's uncomfortable. And these days with the furniture we have, it's not very comfortable to lean. The bottom line is, leaning is a outward symbol showing that I'm going to be free regardless. So comfort is not necessarily what this is fully about. And he wrote that it's because not proper manners for women to recline. Okay, so if you think that's if it's improper for women to recline regarding manners, that's something different. And accordingly, any woman does not require seba. Isha kashuva tzricha seba, but an important woman requires to lean. Bein eitzel aviv tzarech aseba afilu rabbi uvak. The son leans in front of his father, and even in front of his Rebbe, who's his Rebbe Rabbi Muvik, the one who's his primary Rebbe, who's taught him most of his Torah. Talmud lifnei Rabbi einay tzarech haseba, but he doesn't need it. Afilu einay Rabbi Muvik ella imkei nasan lay Rabbi Rishos. The Rebbe would go ahead and give him for Rishos, then he could lean. If he doesn't give him Rishos, then the Talmud does not lean. Hasham is tzarech haseba. A shamish does require to lean, a sexton. And anyone who is required to lean then anyone who does not lean, you have not fulfilled your requirement, and the only time you have to lean really is when you drink the wine and you eat the matzah. And every person must drink 4 kaises in order, and it will be, as we're going to explain. So if you do it with that, one after the other and out of order, you don't fulfill obligation. The shira kais ravi, and the shira of every kais is a fourth of the kais. It's ravi. It's like a cheekful basically. You have to have like a good mouthful of it. About 3 to 4 ounce cup, and about 2 to 3 of those ounces you have to drink. That's the minimum amount. Now, of course, there's no obligation whatsoever for a person to have to eat and drink. We can't force someone to eat and drink. If you don't want to eat and drink, you want to fast for some reason, you're not in the mood or whatever it is of eating and drinking, the Torah can't obligate you to eat and drink. But if you're going to eat and drink, this is what you have to eat and drink. So if you're not going to eat and drink anything the entire night of Pesach, then you could take the minimum sips and everything, that's fine. But if you're going to eat and drink, then this is what you got to eat and drink. I guess that makes sense. And a measure of a vessel that holds it a length and a width of 2 thumbs in its width. So we're talking about, like I said, about 3 ounces. 4 ounces maybe. Think about a shots, right? The 2-finger shots. So this is about two shots up and 2 shots wide. Okay, it's like a double shot, so about 4 ounces. The gavai koirachas beis gedulos v'chatzi gudal v'chaimesh gudal, and its height is like the width of 2 thumbs plus a half a thumb and a fifth of a thumb. The ein tzarich sheyishte kula elaruba, and it's not need to drink the whole thing, only the majority of it. Vim hayayin chazak tzarich lemizag, and if it was very strong wine, it has to be diluted. V'shir ravi la'achar shemozgan, and the revius, that measurement is after it's diluted. And if he drank it undiluted, he has fulfilled an obligation as long as it contains. Again, you have to drink the measure of that. V'yayin shalanu, and our wine, lads, l'chatchila. We don't need to dilute, and that goes these days. These days, wine is already prepared, ready to drink out of a bottle. And it's stated in the Talmud Yushalmi that it's a mitzvah to seek out red wine. She'im halavan meshubach min adam shehu kaidem, and it appears that if white wine is superior than red, then it takes precedence. But these days, red wine, we have very good red wines. You take red wine, and that's the best thing to do. V'yayin mevushal, and v'yayin mevushal, wine that has been cooked, kisav rav hai, she'ena yotze by mevarchin alav shahakol, that wine, you even say shahakol on it, and therefore you cannot fill your obligation. Ubi Yushalmi yesha maitzim bevushal b'karnitain, and the Talmud Yushalmi says the opinion is that one does fulfill with cooked wine, like kanditoin. Vafilu ein lai ella mizayig beis sudas yimacharim lach yayin adal kaisais. And even if he only has food for 2 meals, he should sell to get wine for 4. For the 4 kaisais, afal pi shetzarach lakabel achar kach min tzedakah. Even though he will need to lie in tzedakah, he should still have his 4 wines, 4 cups of wine. Both men and women are obligated in this. And all the mitzvahs of the night, including matzah and mar. And also children, they should have a couple for them. And it's a mitzvah to distribute kelos and egoizim so that they will change, so they will get curious and ask, and they'll be up for the Seder. This is 473. So now we're up to the Seder. So now we're actually at the Seder, and we're ready to start to begin the Seder. Beautiful. We got up to this part. It's going to be several ones. We're going to start today. We're going to finish tomorrow. I'm also going to have a different session where we're going to be talking about the Seder. I'm going to go through the Haggadah, and we're going to interactive question answer, etc., etc. I'll tell you some good pieces about the Haggadah and what you could speak about on Pesach night, my thoughts on it, and what I take out of the Haggadah, etc., etc. That will be tomorrow. I'm going to try to do one session about midday and then probably go by tomorrow night, etc., etc. Anyway, just a little bit tired. I turned over my kitchen today, so I just want to get this done because I think it's important to learn the laws. I want to finish up. By the way, all these things are going to be found on my YouTube channel. But tomorrow, again, like I said, we're going to be going through the actual Haggadah, like as if it's a real Seder, question answer. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we get out of it. So they pour for him the first cup. First he says Bar Then he says sanctification of the day. And he says the Shechianu bracha that we came to this occasion. And he does not say She'asad Nisim. Lefi She'asad Loimar B'Haggadah. Because you can say it later on the Haggadah. We're going to say it later on when we do with Halal. The Imchal b'Shabbos Oimar V'Yichulu. And if it's Shabbos, you have to start. Then you start with Shabbos, which is V'Yichulu Hashmayim V'Hortz Chazam. And God finished creating the heavens and earth, and then He rests on the seventh day. If and if it's on Saturday night, then you do the order of Yaknahaz, which is the Havdalah is included. You have first the Bayer Pregafen, then you have the Kiddush, then you have the Nes, then you have the Havdalah, and then you have Zman. Yain Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman, like I just said, Nusach Havdalah. This is the Nusach Havdalah. Baruch Hashem Malkeinu Melech Bless you, our God, King of the universe. Hamavdu ben Kodesh Chayil ben Or Lachoshech. You're separated between sanctified things and mundane things, between Or Lachoshech, between light and darkness, ben Yisrael La'amim, between Israel and the other nations, ben Yom HaShvi, between the seventh day and the 6 days of creation, ben Kedushas Shabbos, Kedushas Yom Tov, between the holiness of Shabbos and the holiness of the Yom Tov. Havdalti, you've separated the Yom HaShvi, on the seventh day, from all the 6 days of creation, Kedashta, you sanctified Avdalta, and you separated V'Kedashta Esamcha Yisrael, and you sanctified your nation Israel, B'Kedusha Secha, with your holiness, Baruch Hashem, blessed you God, Hamavdil ben Kodesh LaKodesh, you separated between holiness and holiness. And you drink while reclining. If he did not recline, then he must drink again. But you don't say the alagefen, you don't say an after blessing on this cup. If he wants to drink in between the first cup and the second cup, as many times as he wants, he can drink. Just don't get drunk. Because of Avi Yisri, the Avi Yisri wrote, Rak she's having liboy shaloy yitzrach. Pam he should intend not to. If he does drink again, he should intend that this is not a second cup. Because he's not allowed to add to the cups. We have 4 cups. That's it. We don't add to them. We don't have 5, 6, 7, 8 cups. Umavirin lefanav ka'ara. And they bring to him the plate. Interesting. It's interesting the lashon he says. He says they bring to him the kara. We all know that when we show up to the Seder plate, we have the kara, which is that Seder plate in front of us with the horseradish, right? Well, we're going to discuss about the horseradish, but with the romaine lettuce, and we have the parsley or the radish. We have all the parts on it. We have the karpas, and we have the mar, and we have the zera, and we have the zroa. And we have the beitza, right? We have all that stuff in front of us, right? He's saying that first you make Kiddush, and only after you make Kiddush do you bring the kara onto the table. Interesting. I don't think anyone does really practice like that. Even me in my Ashkenaz household, which we follow Torah very strongly, but the custom is that it's already there. It's interesting. All right, just wanted to bring that point out. Not that it makes a huge difference, but I'm just saying it's interesting. He says you make Kiddush, and then you bring the Seder plate onto the table. Okay. Shabai shalosh matzos you can have. So what do you let's talk about the Seder plate. What do you have? The Seder plate, and we'll talk about it again when we deal with Haggadah. But let's talk about it here. Shabai shalosh matzos. You have your 3 matzos. Umar. You have your 2 times umar. The charaises. You have the charaises you dip it into. V'shai yerakos, and you also have your karpas vegetable. Ushnei tavshilin, and you have the 2 things that you cook. You have the cooked forearm or a wing, and you have the cooked egg. Mar zecher levamaru al chayehim, and the mar is a remembrance for how bitter our lives were. The elu yuraka sheitzu behen yedei chayva mar, and these are the vegetables where you could fill your mar. It's chazeres, which is romaine lettuce, va'oil shin, endives, which is what I do. I use the romaine lettuce and I use endives as the two types of mar. You also have two. You not have only one type of mar, have two types of mar. So for some reason, it became a thing in Europe to have horseradish. Horseradish is not one of the types of mar at all. It's not a mar. It's not a bitter vegetable. It's a sharp vegetable. It's very, very sharp. As a matter of fact, in other areas of law, we talk about how horseradish can transfer taste from a knife, even if when it's cold, regarding kashrus and regarding chametz. But regarding horseradish, it's not really what mar is. Mar is something that when it grows in the ground longer, it gets bitter. So we're talking about endives. You're talking about arugula. You're talking about romaine lettuce. I know these days now romaine lettuce can be sweet, but technically romaine lettuce it gets bitter that way. It's usually these leafy vegetables. That's what you think about when you mar. Some say even artichoke, because artichoke also have a bitter taste when it's as it grows longer on the ground. So that is what we're talking about. So what I do is we have the two different, and why it's two types of mar, because the verse says that Mayrim, Yechlu, Mayrim, Yechlu. Sorry, matzah, Mayrim, Yechlu. You eat the matzah with the bitter herbs. It doesn't say bitter herb. It doesn't say mar. It says Mayrim, the bitter herbs. So we learn out that it's at least two bitter herbs. So I have the romaine lettuce and I have the endives. Okay, that's my spiel. So then he goes on. He goes also tamcha and the charchvina and umar. And those things are whatever people like to say. And some people say that horseradish is mar, but horseradish is not. I don't think that the horseradish is mar. The Charoy says who zecher letit, and the Charoy says reminds us of the mortar, the cement. Lefikach shetzarech lasais. See, not really the mortar. It really reminds us of the bricks. If you look in the Torah, it doesn't really say that they made mortar. It says they made bricks, right? Remember that Pharaoh said, "I'm not going to give you straw anymore to make bricks," etc., etc. So it really reminds us of the mud caked together that they sat in making bricks. That's really what it is. Therefore, it has to be thick. And it should have sour items. Remember bitterness to remembrance of the bitterness. And then you have two cooked items. So really, the truth is, our rice actually is very, very sweet. The point is, you dip the mar into something sweet, and you dip the karpas, which is a nice vegetable, into salt water, into vinegar, which is something bitter. So you do the vegetable into vinegar, which is nice into bitter. Then you take the bitter vegetable and put it into something sweet. And the two cooked vegetables, echad zeichel Pesach. One is to remember the Pesach, and that's why we have a forearm or a wing. The echad zeicher l'chagiga, and one is to remember the chagiga, and our custom is to have it with an egg. And the reason why we do an egg is because either the world is around, or because it sort of like reminds us that of the people that died throughout the exile, and mourners eat the egg, or we have the egg because the egg has two hatchings. First, it comes out of a chicken in one stage, and then after a while, it turns into a chicken. So we had Passover, which is the first stage, which is basically the egg, and eventually we're going to have the final redemption, which is going to be like the chicken. So those two stages. So the egg reminds us of two stages. What also reminds us of two stages is when we break the middle matzah. We discuss also one we put away to eat by matzah, and one we're going to eat later about the kaimin. So one is remembering the redemption of Egypt, and one is going to be redemption when we finally get the Messiah, etc. And he washed his hands for the first dipping, and now he's going to dip. Because anything dipped in liquid requires a washing. And he takes a vegetable and recites bar peyadama. Which is interesting. Almost everyone these days now says we don't make a bracha on this vegetable. The washing. Sorry. He does, and we see he does not mention the bracha. If he says Noitel Yadav L'Tzayach Tibul Rishon, you wash your hands, and then he says take the vegetable and recite. He doesn't mention reciting the bracha on the washing. So even though we wash, we do not make a blessing. Umetavel kidei laso shinoi, and he dips. And he creates a shinoi, meaning it makes something strange in the order. Vigach matzah hamses, and he takes the middle matzah, and he breaks it into two pieces. These days we have a child break it. He takes half it for a part of it for afikaimim. The chetzi hasheni yasim bein beis shleimus, and he takes the second part. He puts into the two whole matzahs. Remember, we had three matzahs, so he takes the middle matzah. He breaks it in half. He puts the one piece back in. Other piece he says for afikaimim. At this stage, there was no custom yet to hide the afikomen, to take the afikomen, to negotiate over the afikomen. To him, it was more like you take this piece, you wrap it up, he's going to say, and you leave it for the end of the Seder, you save it for afikomen. That's what the deal was. Later on, the custom came a little bit more out, and it's actually based on a nuanced language of the Gemara about snatching the matzah, which the Gemara means to eat it quickly or to pass from person to person to keep the kids interested. So then it became a thing where the afikomen now was like, okay, where's the afikomen? And then negotiate for it, et cetera, and the customs develop later. Now, v'yigba hakara v'yamar halachmanya. Then he lifts the plate and he says halachmanya. So instead of lifting the whole plate, what's easier is that you take the middle matzah and I hold it in my hand and we say halachmanya, because say this is the bread of affliction. So lifting the plate doesn't really show the bread. So you lift the middle matzah and say halachmanya. This is the bread of affliction. And then you say up until manashtana. You immediately pour the second cup. Kidei shishal tonight. So that the children should ask. V'kaira kol haggadah. They ask, what's going on? Now you have a second cup. You had a first cup. We never have a second cup in the middle of a meal. Where's the second cup coming from? V'kaira as haggadah, and then he recites the haggadah. Ad v'naimer lefanav v'haluka until he says haluka. U'shagiyah lamatzah zu. This is a matzah. He lifts the matzah, v'chein lamarzeh, also lifts the mar, and goes and the mar and v'nayeg v'ashkenaz kanagiyin lefikach magbiyin kol echad kaisin. And when we say lefikach, we also lift our cup. V'arach baruch Hashem l'keinu v'chalam galenu. We say the bracha of galenu. V'chaisen baruch Hashem gal Yisrael. And we say that God redeemed Israel. V'tzarach laimar v'neichel shem min azvachim min apsachim. And you must say that we will eat from the sacrifices, the offerings, the sanctified offerings, and the Pesach offerings, the Zvachim and the Pesachim. The sanctified offerings, Zvachim is the category of Karbanos. Pesachim is the Pesach offering, V'noid l'chashira, and we will sing a new, Shir Chadash will sing a new song. And those who claim there's going to be a new covenant, just know, it just means we're going to have a new song when we're going to have the final redemption. And then he pour the second cup. Then the children ask, if the son does not have understanding to ask, his father teaches him. And if he has no son, then his wife asks him. If not, he asks himself. Chachamim Habakiyin Bilchas Pesach Shailin Zelazeh Manashtana. And if two Talmid Chachamim who are experts in the laws of Pesach ask one another, they also ask one another Manashtana. Umachzir Hakara Shaba, and then he returns the Kara Kadei Lefanav Shemar Agada Kishrin Lachamoini V'Shainim Dvarm. So you after Halachmanya, you take the Seder plate. And you put it away, and then you have manashtana, and then you return the Seder plate, and you lift up, and you show the matzahs, and now you say the Seder. V'gam shetzu lefanav kishoyze matzah zu marzeh, and it will be that he says, and this is the matzah, and this is the mar. So again, when he say that Rabbi Gamliel says that if you don't say these three things, you don't feel your obligation. What is it? Matzah, Mar, and Pesach. So by Pesach, you don't do anything. But by Matzah, you lift the Matzah. And by Mar, you lift the Mar. And then he says that he must say it all nights. We not even once. This time we did twice. But we don't say the manashtana that you're not required to obligate. So the ones we have in our Haggadah is a correct nusach that we say. We don't even dip once. We don't say we're not obligated to dip once. He says, Mar ve'ein loymar adina shemcha leilos anaway chlein tzarach shalok v'vushal halayla echad kuloi tzali. And one should not say nowadays that all the nights we roasted and boiled meat and now we only roasted. Lefisha ein lana Pesach because we don't have the Pesach anymore. What he's doing is he's taking the text from the Gemara and he's saying how it changed in exile. How our text from the Haggadah, from the where the Gemara says it, to now how we put it in our Haggadahs to modify it to the way we have it in exile. That's why he says why we say what we do say and not why we don't say what exactly says in the Gemara. The Kaira Kala Haggadah ad Naimar Lefan of Halayla. And the reason why the Haggadah is that Naimar of Halayla, Kirsel Matz Tzarech, like Bia, Lorais, Masubim, Lachas, Mitzvahs Aleim. Like I said, we get the matzah, you lift it up to show what the mitzvah is. Chayla Gemara says, so Umar. Aval Kishayim Pesach when it says Pesach, Shua Avesenu Eichlin La Yigbiat Avshil Shnira Ki'ilu Egdeshai. When it says that this is the Pesach that our forefathers ate, we do not lift anything. We don't lift the zerah. We don't indicate to it. V'naig ba'Ashkenaz k'nayin al lefikach mabiyah kol echad kaisay v'yachayzo b'yadai ad siyam brachas asher galu. So in Nusach Ashkenaz, like we said, you lift the kos and you make sure you say the whole paragraph of lefikach and achnu, and until it says asher galanu, which is the second to last paragraph right before we make the bracha on the kos. V'hachi isa b'midrash sheicha atayv, and it says in the midrash sheicha atayv, k'nabiyah lefikach oichaz kaisa b'yadai k'dei loymar shira al yayin. When he reaches lefikach, he holds the cup up, and because it's a song over yayin. Ube'inyan brachas halayla ika plogta de ravsa. And regarding the blessing of Hal, there's a dispute among the authorities. The Ritzvah Yumavarech Allah Beis Pa'amim Achas Koydem Achila V'Achas Archila. The Ritzvah would say a bracha on Halal before you eat, after you eat, because we know Hal is split. We say the first two paragraphs of Hal before we eat, and then we say the last parts of Hal, the last parts to the end after we eat. So he used to say a bracha before and after. And so was the one of the last Baal Tosfos, which is Rabbi Meir Rottenberg. He would he would also make a bracha before and after. The Chikos of Rav Hai, and so too Rav Hai says Rav Samach, Rav Amram, Rav Samach and Rav Amram. Aval a Ritzkias for the Ritzkias, V'Avi Ezri Kosov She'ein Levarach Alav Klal. But they wrote that there's no bracha at all. Lefisha Cholka Moshe L'Shnayim L'Snei Asuda L'Acharav, because it's divided in two parts, before the meal and after meal. V'Yim Kain Hayech Yivarach Keva and Shapaisik B'Emsa. How can you make a bracha when you interrupt the middle? V'Chein Hayunayik Avi Rush. The Rush has the same thing. It doesn't make sense to make a bracha when you split it up. And any time when you have a doubt, when you make a bracha, we do not make a bracha. We don't want to use God's name in vain. And the bracha is not ma'akiv. It's not like if you don't make a bracha, you're not going to be able to actually fulfill your obligation. And I would say one step further. The reason I hear why those before wanted to be extra careful in making a bracha before and a bracha after, because usually Hal comes the bracha. But there's two reasons why you don't make a bracha on this night. Number one is it's night. Hal is never said at night. The only time Hal is ever said at night is by Pesach Seder. We don't say Hal at night any other time. It's always by day. The law is always by day, because it says it says it in itself in Hal that Mizrach Shem until the rising of the sun, until it sets down. So we learned that Hal is a time from when the sun rises to the sun sets. So therefore daytime. Second of all, why we want to make a bracha is because there's no mitzvah to say Halal tonight. Halal is said in connection to the mitzvahs we already have, which is Haggadah, which is Levgad Levincha. You have to tell your children all about Passover. So that mitzvah to tell over to your children is one. And then the other mitzvahs you have is eating matzah. And when you eat matzah, then you eat the Korban Pesach. Well, we don't have Korban Pesach these days, but Korban Pesach is eaten with matzah and mar. And these days we eat matzah, and therefore the mar goes with the matzah. So the mitzvahs really are to tell over to your children, and the mitzvah or to someone else, or even to yourself, and it is to eat the matzah and the mar. Those are the ikar commandments. That's the main commandments of the night. Therefore, halal hangs on them. So the blessings you make on the matzah and the mar actually is also on the halal. That's why we don't make a blessing on the entire telling of the Haggadah. It's a mitzvah, right? The Torah says you have to tell your children. So why, if the Torah says you got to tell your children, why don't we make a blessing? And don't say, because maybe someone doesn't have children. Okay, we could always make things that if you don't have children, you don't make a bracha. But people do have children, or you're telling someone else, then you do make a bracha. You make a blessing, right? Why doesn't anyone make a blessing over saying the Haggadah? Because the answer is the blessing is on the matzah and the mar, because the whole entire point of telling the Haggadah is only when b'shvil zeh Asli says Mitzrayim, right? It's only because of it's only because of this. We say that the Torah says that it's because of this that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, because of the matzah, the mar, the Pesach that God took us out of Egypt. That's why the telling over has to do with the matzah and the mar, and therefore those blessings are umbrella for everything. So there's no need to make a blessing on telling over the Haggadah. And there's no need to make a blessing on halal, because the blessing on the matzah already covers everything, because that is showing the full, everything that's needed. Okay. And there are places where they're customary to recite halal in the Beis HaKnesses, that they will not need to make a blessing of it over al Haggadah. And how good and how pleasant is that custom? Smach Masechah Seifrim, and it supports also by Masechah Seifrim, the Chsiv Hasam, it says over there that Yudchas Yam Balayla, V'layla Achas, and 18 days and one night, Gaimrim Bahanal, we say Hal, V'goyla Chaf Aleph Yom Beis Leilos, and it's also on the 2 nights are the 2 nights of Pesach, U'mitzvah Min Hamufchor L'Krois Hal B'Shnei Leilos Shel Golios, and it's a mitzvah. It's a important mitzvah to recite Hal on the 2 nights in the diaspora. Ulevarech Allah v'loymar b'nima, and to bless on it and say it pleasantly. Ulakayima shenamar v'nroima shemo yachtov, and to fulfill what it says, and he will exalt his name. Will exalt the name together. Everyone say it together. It's beautiful, and it's a good custom. And if when you go home and you say it, you don't need to say it anymore, because you already said it when you were in public with everyone else. And it begins how he reads. So it's interesting. Here he says there's a custom. He doesn't say it's the custom of Ashkenaz. He does say it's a nice custom. Later on, when he talks about the order of Ma'ariv, he does not mention saying Hal at all. And it happens to be, it's not, and the Ramah says it's not minig Ashkenaz at all to say Hal in the Beis HaKnesses. Like we said, saying Hal in the Beis HaKnesses really has no point. While it's nice minig, and theoretically it's nice, when you think about what the whole point of saying Hal is, it really only has its place by the Seder. It has no place in Shul, because it's at night, and B, in Shul, there is no matzah and mar in front of you. So therefore, really, Hal only has a place at the Seder. That's why it's said at night, because it's done by the current Pesach, with the matzah and bar in front of you. And therefore, there's no reason to say it in the Beis Medrash. Okay. But he said it's nice, but it came in the Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz does not say it. Okay, at the Seder he says L'maynim, and he begins Hal with L'maynim. Mayim Avarach Asher Galanu, and then afterwards, so he begins it and he ends with L'maynim. In other words, he says the first two paragraphs of Hal, and then he says the blessing of Galanu, and he ends up with God redeemed Israel. And like we said, it's a say from the Zachim Tzarech. Lahagdim Zavach Koidim Pesach, and then he must mention Chiga before the Pesach. V'noidul L'cha Shira Chadasha, and we say it's a new song. Ve'ein Loimar Shira Chadasha, and one should not say Shir Chadash, a new, not Shira Chadasha, not the new song, but Shir Chadash, a new song. Shehu Omer al Gula ad Yasid B'lashon Zachar, because it has to be a Lashon Zachar, not Lashon Nekeva. So it's Shir Chadash because it's going on the future. So it's a masculine term, not Chadasha. Okay, let's just finish off 474 for today. This is a short one. V'shos Gesheni, and he drinks the second cup because of Rav Alphas, and the Rif says to Sarach Levarach Bar Pregavim. Say Baruch Pregavim. This v'chein kasa of Rav Detrani. So to the Rav Detrani going for Rambam. Rambam says Avi Ezri, and they'll say Avi v'loy nihira Avi Arash, but it did not appear correct to my father, to the Tor's father Rush. Ella ain't Sarach Levarach Bar Pregavim. Really, rather. He does not need to say Bar Pregavin. Ella al Kais Rishon, the first one. Shu al Kiddush v'yal Shlishi, and the third one Shel Brachas Hamazon for the Brachas Hamazon. Aval Sheni v'yal Arvi, with the second and the fourth one Ein Tzarich Levarach. You do not need to recite. V'chein Kasav Rav Kain Tzedek, and Rav Kain Tzedek also said this. Well, the Indian bracha achreina, and we got a bracha kasav rif shetzarach levarech achar sheni v'achar avi, and regarding including the bracha of the rif, wrote that one must recite the blessing after the second and after the fourth one. V'hikshu l'dvarav lama yivarech achar sheni, and they challenge his view. Why should one recite a blessing after the second one? V'alaya suda lafanav hu paiter yayin shebasech suda. Doesn't the meal exempt a person who's drunk wine from the meal? And if so, how can he conclude a bracha after? And Razi wrote that one should recite a concluding blessing after the first, and after the third, and after the fourth. He wrote that the cup of Kiddush and the one of Berachas Hamazon, Kevan sheyesh loy kais levarech Allah Berachas Hamazon ein levarech aleim al gefen. Since he has a cup over them which recite Berachas Hamazon, one should not recite al gefen over them. Aval kais achroinais al kol echad yesh levarech Allah al gefen. But rather later cups in each one you recite al gefen. For Rav Shrira Rav Hai Kosvu Shetzarach Levarach Lefnei Kol Echad V'Yechad, and Rav Shrira Gain and Rav Hai Gain wrote that one recite a bracha before each and every cup. Aval bracha achreina loy, but he should not make including bracha. Shei levarach ela achar achrein. He should only make reciting after the only final one. And his Avedoni Rush and the Tor's father Rush Hiskim L'Reinu Bracha Achreina Shein Levarach Ela Achar Achrein. And the Rush agreed that with them regarding the concluding bracha that is only recited as the last one. In case of Harav Yena, and so to Rav Yena. So it seems like, according to the Torah, Bar Paragafin is only made on the first and third, but not on the second and fourth, and the Bracha Achrona is only made on the last one. You don't need, so in other words, you obviously bench, which concludes the first and second cups, and the first, second, and third cups. Sorry, first and second cups. The third is right after benching and grace after meals, and then the fourth one is when after then you make a bracha achron, you make an alagefen on it, and then you'll conclude the Seder. And hopefully we'll, let's see how this is. Yeah, we'll conclude more of the Seder tomorrow.